Hanging out with Clement
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
And today we are hanging out with award-winning legendary broadcaster John Robbie, who's in studio with us. John, welcome to 702. Welcome back. It's so good to have you here.
It's fabulous to be here, and I hope it's not hanging out to dry.
No.
But can I just say, coming back here, and it's 9 years that I've been retired from 702. I can't believe it, and I've been meeting some old friends.
Yeah.
And I hear you talking about that issue, about the child, and I think of Abraham and Isaac. In the Bible, religion, health, life, death. My goodness me, what an issue to talk about, and let's hope sanity prevails.
Yeah, we really hope sanity will prevail. I mean, previously the courts have intervened to try and get sanity to prevail, and I suspect in this case the matter will also end up in the courts. So, can I just say that there was, when I joined Prime Media, this is in 2016 or thereabout. When did you leave?
I left, 9 years ago. You know what they say?
It's terrible with math. So
there's three types of people in the world. There's those who can do maths and those who can't.
Okay, it looks like Abel cared. He said it was 2017 when you left. So I arrived in
just
2016.
At Christmas, just before Christmas.
Yeah. And I remember I was a reporter at Eyewitness News, and Katie Katapodi sent me to Luthuli House, and something was happening at Luthuli House in the morning. And I had to do a crossing with you for the very first time ever. I had just joined Prime Media a couple of months ago. I was so nervous.
No.
Because I have been listening to you for so long, and I really admired you as a broadcaster. And I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I cannot mess this thing up. And Stephen Kruter said a thing. I remember when I told him at the time, I'm so scared, I've got a crossing with John Robbie. And he said to me, don't F it up. That's what Stephen always used to say, which didn't really help. So, speaking to you on your radio show, I felt like I've made it. It was so incredible. And I just want you to know that that was the highlight of my career.
Well, I'm blushing here. But what I always did was, because I had this sort of reputation of if people gave me nonsense, I would try and hold them to account. But with 702 people, my job was to make them look great.
Oh.
So I always said that to, I obviously missed saying it to you.
Yeah.
But I said it to people, look, my job is to make you sound great on the radio because you're part of the team. It's like the advertisers, my job is to help the advertisers put their products up there. So it's a whole balance thing. And maybe I didn't make that clear to you beforehand, but how did the interview go?
It went really great.
Good.
It went really great.
I'm glad.
It was quite incredible.
Because when people come up to me now and say, John, I once spoke, I go, oh my goodness me, here we are.
What have I done? What have I done? Do you miss it?
I do. I miss the platform.
Yeah.
I miss the platform, and especially with some of the nonsense that's going on in the world at the moment. Nonsense in South Africa and nonsense in the world. I mean, talking about the cleansing of the ANC, the house, and a premier who talks about how he has to shower in the hotel. I mean, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You cannot not miss having a go at that sort of nonsense. But equally, the good things that are out there when something happens that is fantastic, and there are good things out there. I mean, dare I say it, our tax collecting is back to where it was under the great Pravin Gordhan. And, so keeping that balance and having an opinion and so on, and having this platform was a huge, huge privilege.
Yeah.
But I don't miss getting up in the morning.
And you probably don't miss it more than other people who do breakfast, because you used to wake up really early.
Quarter past 2.
My goodness.
Quarter past
to be
2.
here what time?
Well, I tell you what happened. I mean, going back, and I know the book is out. I'm looking forward to reading the book. Unfortunately, I couldn't make the launch. But we made it up as we went along. There was 702 was a music station. It was rock and roll. It was irreverent. Stan Katz, John Burks, and that itself was revolutionary at the time in South Africa. And then, of course, 5FM with Malcolm Russell started, and they started a irreverent music station with a better signal. So over a bottle of scotch, apparently, Stan Katz and Rena Brunberg decided to go talk, and they needed somebody to talk. And I was doing sports, and I was getting more politically aware, and they threw me into the graveyard shift.
Yeah.
And
Was
so
that Talk at 9?
that was Talk at 10.
Talk at 10.
They had to move me to Talk at 9 because too many parents were saying their student kids weren't going to bed. They weren't getting sleep because they were listening to the radio program. But I was incredibly lucky in that a week after I started, FW stood up in Parliament and said, we're changing the world. And I was this little radio station right up at the top, you know. But so having that platform was fantastic, and we made it up.
Yeah.
Then, as we progressed, we started to say, well, hold on a second. Technically, we're all over the place. You know, there's a technique, there's a format to radio, as there is with everything else. You know, throwing forward, going backwards, recapping, how you handle ads, how you handle things. You learn it. It's a trade. You learn that particular trade. So they sent me to Australia, and I sat at the feet of the great Alan Jones, who ruled breakfast radio for years and years and years in Australia. Sadly has come to a bit of a bad end, but that's a different story. And so what happened was, he used to get in at 4:00 in the morning, and I went and I listened to his radio program the first day I was in Australia. I couldn't believe it. I wanted to give up. It was so brilliant. It was just so incredible. Then I went in 4:00 and I saw how they prepared. And I saw how they put things together, etc. And being a simple Irishman, Irish South African, I said, well, if he gets in at 3:00, if he gets in at 4:00, I'll get in at 3:00. This is when I moved to the morning, okay? Yeah. And so that's what I did. And then being a man of habit, once I started getting in at 3:00 and got into the habit of how to run the show, I couldn't change it. So I got up at 2:15 every morning for 17 years. And I'm proud to say I was never late once.
Yeah, I mean, they always tell us the story. You've never been late once. What time would you go to bed then if you have to be up at 2:00?
9:00 was always 9:00 was always the absolute limit, except the day after the World Cup soccer final in 2010.
Yeah, which is understandable.
I got to bed at 1:45 and I got up at 2:15. But, you know, you couldn't miss that day because those days were so fabulous, and that was such a great day.
Oh, man, those are such amazing stories. You always have interesting stories to tell. Love it. We want to get to know you also through song, John. And we're going to start with one of your favorite songs, African Dream by Vicky Sampson. Tell me about that song. Why is it so special to you?
Well, it's so special because I'm talking about the World Cup soccer. I remember, obviously, the World Cup Rugby 95, but even bigger was the Cup of Nations in 96 when South Africa won the Cup of Nations. I mean, it was incredible. And I went with Dan Mayani to every single game except one. I missed the very first game against Cameroon. And as it went through that tournament and the crowd, it was so sensational. And then to win 2-0 against Tunisia in the final and Mark Williams scoring. And if you remember, this was the song of the tournament. It was Vicky Sampson singing this song about the African dream. And of course, the African dream, which was modeled on the American dream. And of course, it came true in the Cup of Nations. And we hope it'll come true in general. But this song is very, very special.
John Robbie, so lovely to hear you on radio. You won't remember me, but I won a prize with you years ago. We had to talk to each other, and then I said to you, put a sock in it, John. And I won 5,000 rands.
Oh, my goodness me.
And I'll never forget that. Good luck to you, and lovely to hear you. God bless.
Thank you
Lynn
very
from
much
Pretoria.
Indeed. Thank you very, very much indeed. That's lovely.
Yeah.
Good morning to the living legend. It must feel so good, John, to receive your flowers while you're still alive. And Clement, no hard feelings, but for the next 30 minutes, we're not hearing you, bro. Hey, John, you made me love talk radio. The only regret I have is that I didn't listen to you soon enough. But for a few years that I listened to you, Man, it was so good. And I remember me and a buddy of mine, we were so heartbroken when we heard of your departure. But hey, man,
Thank you.
I'm still wishing you all the best in whatever you're involved with.
Wow.
Long live John.
Good morning, Clement. Good morning to 702 listeners. Today you are hosting one of the greatest presenters of all time in John Robbie. Thanks for bringing him back. Thanks for the memories. And I'm sure that in one of his songs that he have selected, The Spirit of a Great Heart by Johnny Clegg is there. And I'm sure that will win me 2,000 rand. Thank you.
Oh, man.
Lovely.
How was it tough to decide to leave?
It was the most friendly ending, I think, in the history of broadcasting. Because inevitably it ends in tears one way or another when someone comes to the end of a time, whether it's 702 or anyone else. But I've just turned 70. Now, can you believe it? I still think I'm a 21-year-old rugby player. And, I think I was 32 when I came on something like that, 702. And I'm 70.
Yeah.
And I just knew. So for 2.5 years, I told 702, Terry Falkvane, I said, look, I want to end it. I want to end it. It's coming to an end. And they said, all right, but I said, I'm in no hurry, but I'm just telling you it's coming to an end. And so what they did was they said, we'll tell you when it's right. We don't want you to go, but we'll tell you when it's right.
How many years before you left?
It was 2.5 years before I left.
Okay.
And then if you remember, my dear friend, Reedy Klabi, was on maternity leave, and they brought in a gentleman called Eusebius McKaiser, who shook things up a little bit. And then when Reedy came back, they said, because Eusebius obviously had a big career ahead of him, sadly no longer with us, although we were never great friends, I must be honest. And then they sort of said, well, if you come back, we want you back, but if you come back, we're going to have to lose maybe Eusebius or somebody else. So just the time was right, and they were fantastic, and the parting was amazing. I can remember my last show and everybody outside, and then the one thing I'd always wanted to do was, I love the outside broadcasts. And 702 said to me, they said, look, as long as there's a reason for it, we'll go there. So Rugby World Cup, we'll go to Australia, we'll go to the UK. Laureus World Sports Awards, I'm proud to be an ambassador, was in St. Petersburg. We went to St. Petersburg. We went to Nigeria when they said Nigerians' GDP is bigger than South Africa. So we went to Lagos. That was a funny story because everyone said, Lagos, you can't go to Lagos. And my wife wouldn't let me take my knife's watch. And they said, you've got to be careful. And we got to Lagos, and the nicest people I've ever met. And all they could say was, how do you live in Johannesburg? How do you say that to us? How do you live in Johannesburg? But that's another story. And the one place I never got to is India. And I read that book, Shantaram, and I just said, I've got to see India before I die. So 702 very kindly organized a trip to India for my wife and myself, and we brought some friends along, and it was fantastic. So of course I was sad to go, but I just knew, like the end of my rugby career, the time is right. The time is right.
Yeah,
it worked out.
Speaking of the rugby career, at what point did you get interested in broadcasting, from after rugby, then being a sports journalist, sports presenter, to doing Talk at 10? What piqued your interest in broadcasting? Do you remember the time when you thought, I actually like this thing, I'd like to do this?
I'd always done interviews well, as a sportsman, as a captain, you do an interview, and I'd always done that quite well, whether it was in Ireland or here. And then when I came to South Africa, I remember driving down, I think it was Commissioner Street, one of the streets. And I was new to the country, and I was twiddling the radio. And I came across this sound. And I can't make the noise, but it was like an animal. Then it was two animals. And then I realized it was a competition on radio where John Burks had asked people to phone in, two people, and they had to make a noise like beavers mating. Okay? And I looked around, and every car, the people were, just falling about laughing.
Yeah.
I said, what is this? And, I came from Ireland and we had pirate radio stations, Radio Caroline, Luxembourg, but I'd never heard anything like this. So I became a fan of 702. And I was playing rugby for the Transvaal rugby team, which are now the Lions. And we weren't having a very good time. But John Burks and the late Kevin Kelly, who was his engineer, they were great Transvaal fans. So every so often, there were no cell phones, but I would phone in and just say, thank you for support, thank you for support. And then I got a call from Chris Gibbons asking, would I like to come in and do the morning sport? And at the time, I had a job with a company called National Trading Company. It was sort of a rugby job, but, I worked hard at it. I was involved in sales. And so I would come in and do the early morning sport, and then I'd go and work for National Trading, and then I would do my rugby training. So I basically had 3 jobs. And I used to do the morning sport 3 times a week. David Williams, who I believe was at the book launch as one of the writers of the new 702 history, which I'm looking forward to reading. And we used to do the whole shift, and we got paid 28 Rand. That was our fee for the whole thing. But I fell in love with it, absolutely. The minute I started, I said, this is what I want to do. And I had 30 years on 702.
What can you tell us about the transition of the station and the transition of the country, which I imagine also somehow found expression through how you guys did the work and the conversations you had? Because, 17 years is a long time. You started, I'm sure the listenership was also, at the time, probably majority white listeners on 702.
Yep.
And the country was at a particular...
Although, if I can just come in here, the original 702 was the Rainbow of Sound. Yeah? Rainbow Station. It was the first sort of they had, because it was before my time. Yeah. They had people of all different colors. And there was a large listener, but basically it was white. People would make jokes, talk about things that in those days, remember, everything was apartheid. Yeah. Of course, there was a cross listenership. But once the country moved, and I think the station... And I've got to give credit to Chris Gibbons. Chris and I were never close. But Chris Gibbons, when the station was an irreverent music, funny, beaver mating station, Chris Gibbons ran a newsroom. Yeah. That was fantastic. That was world class. And took no nonsense from everywhere and broke boundaries, etc. And I think then, when we went to talk, I immodestly was one of the first people to say, look, we're not going to talk about what's your favorite coffee or what movies have you seen. We're on the edge of history here. We're on a knife edge in this country. And as I say, we started having a real conversation, and it was at times very scary. At times it was pretty hardcore. We had great fun as well, because we felt like we were not just living through history, but making history. And now, I got those lovely calls, but the ones that really get me now are when people phone up, and I'll tell you, we time for a very quick story. I was invited to give out prizes at a golf day in Pretoria, at one of the golf clubs in Pretoria. Dennis Hutchinson, the great golfer and commentator, couldn't do it. It was one of the casinos. So Jenny and I on a Sunday went up to this golf day, and we played golf, and then I had to go to the casino. We had to go and give out the prizes. And we were late in, and the people had started moving away, and a waiter came up to me and said, someone wants to know, are you a member of the ANC? Which is a band organization or whatever. And I thought it was a joke. So I said, no, tell him I'm a member of the CNA. I thought that'd be a good joke. And then it wasn't, because there were 3 Afrikaans AWB supporting guys, and we had to get away with a life. They nearly beat us up. Jeez. And they wanted to kill us, and they said, if you give out the prizes, we will kill you. And they were big gamblers and everything. Anyway, it was a horrible time. About 3 years ago, somebody phoned me and said, there's a guy in our club who says he was one of those guys. Oh, my goodness. And he's always felt terrible about it, realized what you were trying to do, and wants to pass on apology. And I said, I'd love to meet that guy. And then also young black activists who thought maybe all white people were like Eugene Terreblanche. And they say, I listened to you, I realized that not everybody is as we are told. So those people who come back and say, maybe I didn't like you at first,
but I get it now.
You opened our eyes a little bit, or opened our ears a little bit. Those are the calls that I love. But having said that, it's just lovely to be remembered.
That's amazing. It's 10:31.
Clement
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
22 minutes before 11 o'clock.
I just thought of something.
Yes?
Bread.
Yeah.
What about Rise Mzansi.
Yeah.
With the ANC.
With the ANC's one bread, one family. Rise Mzansi.
You can't make it up. Sorry.
Oh man, John Robbie is on our Hanging Out feature this morning. What a lovely conversation and getting your messages. We've got so many calls, so many WhatsApps, and I promise I'll get to them in a moment. Jenny Cruz Williams just sent me a WhatsApp and says, "Hey Clement, John was the reason I fell in love with 702. I'd never had anything like it. The vitality was just incredible."
Jenny, that's lovely.
Thank you, Jenny, for the message. And then our colleague from 947, Tando Tabete, says, Clement, tell John to say these words. For the businessman who knows what he wants.
Khaliks, tell him I sent you.
Oh, man.
Do you know how that started?
Yeah, please
They
tell me.
moved from the Oriental Plaza into Santon. And they'd started there and, bunch of Indians shop in Santon. This is when Santon was almost lily white. And they placed ads on 702s. They were listeners. And I'll never forget it. The first ad was for a tuxedo. And it was 370 Rand to buy a tuxedo. And I think maybe they threw in a shirt. And my son, who's now a lawyer living in London, my son was going to all these matric dances. And he must have been quite a good-looking guy because he was getting invited to all these dances. And I was hiring the suits. So I read the ads and then I said, do yourself a favor. If you've got a kid who's going to buy one of these suits, you'll save yourself a fortune. And Khaliks reported they had queues round the corner.
What?
I never had a contract with Khaliks. We've remained huge friends. I was there 2 weeks ago and Mohammed there tells you, I actually met Khalik there himself, the man who started it. And they said that 7 out of 10 customers say, John Robbie said, tell him I sent you.
Yeah.
How's
Last
that?
time I went there, I said, John said, I must tell you guys. He said me. All right. So let's go to some calls, John, on 011-883-0702. Peter, let's start with you. You are in Santon. Good morning.
Tonight.
Hey, Peter.
It's Peter tonight, Leo Payne here.
Oh, Peter. Hey, Peter. Tonight, the boxing.
But John, you were saying how you got into 702. Now I want to relate my story. How I got into 702 because it was you. I used to call you off air talking about boxing, telling what's happening in boxing. And one day you said to me, "Listen, why don't you come and join us and become a boxing correspondent?" And I said, "Well, I'm a student. I'm an engineering student at Wits, and I don't know anything about journalism and reporting." And you remember what you said to me, John?
Tell me.
You said journalism is not a science; it's an art. You said, "Look at me, a rugby player. Where I am right now.
Oh, wow!
I'm a journalist." And then, John, you gave me one lesson which I always used, and I think it made me who I am in boxing. And you said to me, "Peter, every time there is a boxing match or press conference or anything like that, look for something that is different that everybody else is not seeing.
Yeah.
That's
Just
it.
look for something that that no one is seeing." And then I just did that, John, and it was just incredible. So I just want to thank you, John. That you really.
Peter, that's fantastic. I'm blushing, man. Thank you very much.
That's so amazing. Thank you so much, Peter, for the call. Rafilo, you are in Remsa. Hi.
Hi, Clement. Hi, John. Refilo Munacheng, the Soweto Report.
Hey, how are you doing, man?
Very, very well. I couldn't agree more with Peter, with Tando and Johnny Chris William. You made me a very confident communicator because you gave me an opportunity for the Soweto Report because I was just a regular caller because my parents used to listen to 702. And I just want to ask you this question, John. Do you know how much of an influential person you are in our country?
Stop.
Do you know?
I'm an old dinosaur, man. An old dinosaur.
Look, you've produced people like myself. I remember when Alex Tilly-Smith was still the producer. Paladikwango, I think, was the station manager, and Yusufa Bramji. And even after the program and how I was coached, and you encouraged me that 702 should take me for training to become a better person. Subsequently, I had a radio program on Josie FM, and at the SAPC, I did a program called The Business Review. So thank you so much for everything and for really encouraging us. There's a lot of young black people that you've encouraged, you've developed, and you also opened doors for them. Lastly, I met Thabo Mbeki because of you in 2002 when he came to Soweto for the June 16 commemoration. So it was because of you invited me, and we had an outside broadcast there, so I met him because of you. Thank you so much, and I'll forever be grateful for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Some WhatsApp voice notes. I'm going to start crying now. I'm going to start
crying.
It's
okay to cry. It's okay to cry. 072 and 702.
Morning, Clement, and morning to the legend there in the studio, John Robbie. I used to listen to him and then years ago. Please ask John to tell you the story about him and Louis Late when he was still playing for the Den Transvaal, Tochid here in Randburg.
It's so good to see John again back on the airwaves. I hope you're good, John. I was a young technical producer during the midnight show between obviously midnight and 6 o'clock. And I remember John came in at around about, I think 3 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken.
3, yeah.
And he was always on time. Anyway, good show. Thanks, Clems. Bye.
Clement Thabo here. You know, I can never stop to admire John Robbie. From the days of 702, Talk at 9, broadcasting from Medunsa Mountain. You know, I couldn't sleep without listening to that guy. I was in tertiary then. And, you know, I was so fascinated by how you would analyze the South African, political landscape. And he was so frank. I'm telling you, he was so frank. I miss him a lot. I must really say. Those are the kind of guys who made me listen to 702 all the way. I even forgot about music. My radio is playing 702 from morning to noon every day because of people like him. Thank you so much, John.
Beautiful. Have you always known the kind of impact you had on the people? Like when you listen to this?
Not really. I mean, we were living through history. And bear in mind, I'm not going to bang on about this, but I was a rugby player who toured here in the old days of apartheid. And it's something I've atoned for, I believe, and I'm very ashamed of it. But I was a young rugby player. It was my dream to play rugby. And then suddenly I was on 702 and I loved it. And suddenly the country was heading towards, and people forget that this country, every time you look at Gaza, the obscenity there, you look at the obscenity of Ukraine, you look at the obscenity of Sudan, you look at these that could have been South Africa. When the first election took place, everyone remembers the happiness, the long queues. Bombs went off at then Jan Smuts Airport. People were killed. Would the army go with the new dispensation? The country was on a knife edge. And I think that I, Alan Matthews, my producer, Alistair Teeling-Smith, it was a team. We were like-minded, and we saw this golden opportunity. And thank God that Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk, who didn't like each other very much, but both of them could see the way forward. And I remember when Chris Hani was killed at the Easter show, the weekend of the Easter show, and he was murdered by this mad anti-communist Polish Janusz Wallace. And the country could have gone up in flames then. It really could. And Nelson Mandela stood up and paid tribute to this white Afrikaans lady who'd identified Wallace and said, This is what we look at, not the terrible murder. And at the time, it was so exciting because you were actually living through history, and you were driven so much that it was what you said, where you're listening to. You didn't think of the impact. That's why when I come now, and that's, the story about the golf and the person who wanted to kill me and so on. And I look back now and there's that old expression, the older you get, the better you were. Yeah. I made every mistake in the book and pissed people off and said stupid things. But the one thing was, it was always genuine. It was me. Yeah. What you got on the radio was what I was off the radio. You know, some people put on a persona, a radio persona, whatever. But it's lovely when people come up to you. I mean, I was yesterday, of all things, I was in a wallpaper shop in Kramerville, buying some wallpaper, getting excited about wallpaper. Now, this is how old I am now. And there was a young lady, very, very helpful young lady. Kira was her name, and she was helping us. And a lady came rushing out, slightly older, and said, I recognize the voice. John Robbie, how are you doing? Oh, gosh, moments like that are fabulous.
Speaking of being frank and pissing people off, have you gotten into trouble with this government officials? I'm sure you have, and the politicians, because of how frank you were and how
you must be joking. The Minister of Health.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
God.
Me. That was. I mean, I've got a poster in my bar. Robbie wins war. You know, it was the height of the AIDS lunacy.
Yes.
Where Thabo Mbeki, who in many ways was a great president, but he had a couple of blind spots. Zimbabwe was one. And AIDS. He did not believe HIV caused AIDS. And he had this minister, Dr. Manto Shabalala Msimang, who went along, and it was lunacy. And I remember, it might have been Katie Katapodis, but somebody had a domestic worker at home who died of AIDS, and her mouth was filled with cloves of garlic. Because they said garlic and, you know, African potatoes and all this sort of stuff. And it was lunacy. And then, shall I tell you the full story? Because I don't think I've ever told the full story. What happened was the minister, who was a medical doctor, went along with the party line. And so he had all this nonsense, and it was terrible and it was dreadful. But Mbeki was a very powerful man, so people were loath to cross him. And the DA, or it might have even been the Democratic Party in those days, I can't remember, they sent a thing and said they've received something from the Department of Health saying that AIDS comes from aliens. It comes from outer space. It comes from little green men. It comes out. The DA
was the
said
official document?
They said, we've received this from the Minister of Health, the Ministry of Health. Get the minister on. So we got the minister on. And I said, what's this? And first of all, she was late. It was a terrible line. All the things that in those days you tried to get someone to say, please be on a good line. Please don't be late because... Oh, anyway, she came on. And I was trying to make a very informal show. So I called her by her first name. Manto, you know, what's the story? And she said, John, this is very disingenuous of the DA because anything to do with AIDS, from all over the world, we put in a bundle, we copy it, and we send it to all the different provinces. This was one of 500 things about AIDS. Something that came up from somewhere, and we included it in the bundle, and we sent it off. In other words, she'd answer the question. It was one tiny piece of everything to do with AIDS. So I looked around and thought, well, let's get the DA on and tell him to stop messing around and, you know, causing trouble. Then I looked at the clock and saw I had another 5 minutes left of the interview. So I said, well, why didn't you put, how's this for Looney Tunes on the top? There's no confusion. And she said, there is no confusion. And I said, what do you mean? She says, there is no confusion about AIDS. Our policy is perfectly clear. And I said, of course there's confusion. The whole country is confused. People there is no confusion. There is no confusion. And I was getting a bit thing. And then I remember Jeremy Paxman, who was a broadcaster in the UK, who was being stonewalled by somebody. I forget the question. But he asked the question 13 times to a politician. Just ask the question, ask the question, ask. So I said, do you believe HIV causes AIDS? And she said, that's not the point. This, that, that. I said, do you not believe HIV causes AIDS? No. Then she realized she was in trouble. She wouldn't answer the question. And then she said, and we haven't met. You called me Manto instead of... And the whole thing went... And then I lost my temper and I said, I've never heard such rubbish. And put the phone down and, oh my God, all hell broke loose. And the ANC wanted me fired and they were going to take all the advertising from Prime Outdoors and not give it to them. And I mean, I was in the middle of, well, a shitstorm, if I can use that, excuse my language, a shitstorm. And it was terrible. And we were right there in the middle of it. And 702, Dan Mayani, and Rena Broomberg stood by me. And then William Kirsch, and I understand now, went behind and sort of apologized for the way I'd said things and not for a little bit of an apology. So I'm ashamed to say I was furious. And I stormed into a board meeting. All the board members of Prime Media were there. And I called William Kirsch a gutless F you.
In front of the board
In
members?
front of everybody. I was so furious, angry. And I actually resigned that weekend because of it, and I was talked out of it. And then on Monday, the ANC said, we've moved on. There is no threat. Wada. And the one thing I remember is that the week after this row, Kada Asmal stood up. He was the Minister, I think, of Water Affairs. And he was a professor at my old university when he was in exile, Dublin University. I'd never met him. And he stood up and he called out Mbeki and the health department on AIDS. He was the first person to stand up. And I'd love to think he sort of thought, that little loud-mouthed Irishman who I used to protest against for playing rugby in South Africa, he had the guts to stand up. And then years later, I met the late Kada Asmal, and I thought he's going to give me a hard time for the rugby.
Yeah.
And he threw his arms around me and said, what you and Dan Mayani do is beautiful. So you asked, did I ever get into trouble? Yes, I got into trouble.
I mean, you got into big trouble. So I want to play a song, at least another one before we're going to wrap up our chat. Elton John, the club at the end of the street. Tell me about that.
Elton John was my first absolute superstar. I just loved him, his music and Bernie Taupin's words. Yeah. And then, of course, it came out he was gay. And of course, I grew up in Holy Catholic Ireland, and to be gay, it was something, you didn't meet gay people. Of course, you met gay people, but nobody was openly gay.
Open about it.
And he was sort of the first person who came out, and he was just so brilliant that it didn't matter. And this song just, for some reason, I think of the Caribbean. I think of a little bar in the Caribbean, and I can't do it. When you watch me getting up and dance, now I don't normally dance, and when I do, I don't dance normally. So I might just get up and dance during this one.
Karabo is here to take the video of that.
Oh,
I don't want to wrap this up. I don't want to wrap this up.
We'll do it again, man. We'll do it. It's great fun. It's great fun.
It was so fun, John. Thank you so much.
And
let
me just apologize to anybody I pissed off. Apart from politicians occasionally, where I tried very hard. Yeah, we're bad politicians because I wouldn't do that job. They've got the hardest job in the world. But to anyone who've ever pissed off, I don't think I ever intended to do it. I apologize. And to the people who enjoyed what I did all those years, and I'm available. I'm out there. I'm looking for something to do. If there's anyone needs an ambassador or something like that, I'm available. You can find me on Twitter. Hit me up. Is that what they say?
Yeah, that's what they say.
Hanging with you out to dry and then hit me up.
And then hit me up. John, on a serious note, thank you so much for coming through. You
Fabulous.
Have been an inspiration to us who followed on your path. And we just appreciate the guidance that you also give us, because you do give us feedback, and we appreciate that. And we appreciate the work that you've done.
Many
thanks.
Thank
you for coming through to hang out
with us.
Many thanks. It's a minute before 11.